All right, welcome back everybody. I am David Teicher, Chief Content Officer at Brand Innovators. We are backstage in Hudson Yards at our Retail and Commerce Summit, the first of a series, and I'm sitting down with Brigitte King, the Chief Digital Officer at Colgate-Palmolive. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Before we dive in, I want a point of clarification, or I'm curious. The Chief Digital Officer, can you define your role a little bit within the C-suite, within the organization as a whole, what your remit and purview are?
Sure. So look, the Chief Digital Officer role is a new one at Colgate-Palmolive, and I think, as you know, many CPGs are going down this digital transformation avenue as necessary as we build new capabilities for what I call marketing in the digital age. So my remit at Colgate-Palmolive is really to drive digital marketing and digital commerce. And that really is building out new capabilities for our organization to reach and target our consumers more effectively than ever before, but also create content that's relevant, compete in the platforms that, as you know, have completely changed where the eyeballs are going. And it's an exciting role. I'm part of the senior team at Colgate-Palmolive. We've got all of our global remit for my team is to really transform the organization so we do better marketing and better capture and retention of our consumer base.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Sure.
And like we were saying, the C-suite itself is evolving. So understanding the birth of new positions and what that role entails and the role that they play within the broader organization, I think is really interesting, and hopefully our community agrees. So thank you so much.
Sure.
So let's dive into it, and we'll start with a little bit of a retrospective. It's almost 3 years now since we first entered this world of marketing in a pandemic. And of all the industries that were affected, maybe the world of retail and CPG marketing, you could say, may have been one of the most tumultuous, right? One of the most heavily impacted. So I'm curious, what did you learn over the last few years, and how can it be applied moving forward?
So look, it was definitely tumultuous, right? And I should say that I joined Colgate-Palmolive in this remit 100% virtually. So that was its own challenge, but it was an awesome experience. I learned a lot by actually onboarding and up-ramping that way. But I took away a couple of lessons. One is really on how you build a team today, and two is how you instill agility. So I'll talk a bit about both. I think building a team, especially during that time period, and even today where change is a constant, you have to be able to build real team spirit while also building out new skills and capabilities your team needs to succeed. That's the first thing. The second is agility. I mean, it's crazy how fast everything is moving and how you have to stay on top of so many trends, and I know that's often said, but the reality is today, how do you get your teams to move faster? And my personal belief is using data-driven decisioning at the core of that team. So it's not just about moving fast for speed's sake, it's about moving intelligently and yet fast. I think those are the two lessons I took away from marketing in a pandemic.
Thank you. And clearly those are applicable much more, beyond, today, but to what you're going to be doing moving forward.
Yes, absolutely.
So now let's look a little bit forward, and again, it's going from one roller coaster to another, where we talked about the pandemic, but now we're marketing in economic uncertainty and whatever that means. Recession, inflation, you still have supply chain issues, and unfortunately, despite the way it sounds, a recession and an inflation don't cancel each other out. They sound like they should, but they don't. So what are you doing from a strategy perspective, or have you adopted any new tactics or approaches to what you're doing to either plan for it or brace or adapt to it?
Yeah, look, I think inflation and recession, it's inherently linked, right? It affects retail and it affects consumers. So to me, you kind of have to deal with both at the same time, all the time. I think for me, what's really important right now for brands today is to think about all your cost structures. You really take a fresh look and re-examine all your cost structures. That's one of the most basic things you can do when faced with inflationary recession environments. The second thing I think is just an opportunity for all of us is very simple. Extract the maximum value out of all the dollars you're spending. So really go under the hood, look at everything and determine, are you extracting maximum value from that? And if you're not, how could you? And if it doesn't make the cut, it cuts. So I think that those are things that kind of help people through these environments. And then the last thing I would say is, it's not the first time we're going to go through this. It's probably not the last. So you're going to need a dose of resilience. You're going to need to know that this is not the first and only storm you're ever going to face.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because the brand has to adopt the same mindset almost as the end consumer, right? If the end consumer is going to be more discerning or looking for value and efficiencies for their own dollar, then you're doing that from the brand's perspective. So
absolutely. And look, with Colgate-Palmolive, we have a plethora of brands. And one of the things we're focused on is science-backed brands that have a meaningful value proposition to consumers that meet their everyday needs and solve their everyday problems. And so whether it's Colgate toothpaste or, Fabuloso home care or our skin health brands like PCA Skin, those are the kinds of things that matter to consumers. So our job is to make them valuable, like you said. Absolutely. Really make a difference.
I love it. So let's move into, I guess, maybe a little more of a lighthearted topic, right? Sure. It's January, still somehow the longest never-ending month of the year. And everybody, we talk to in our industry, we're thinking about, the trends, right? What are you thinking about? Are there exciting new technologies, exciting new behaviors, or other industry trends that are just maybe not impacting your work today or tomorrow, but something that you're thinking about and as far as your plans go for the year?
Look, I think the buzzword du jour is AI, ML, what's happening with data, how consumer brands and retailers are going to be able to use that data to advance business and solve problems. So I think that being said, that's kind of what everybody's talking about right now. I think it still comes down to some of the fundamentals. Do you have the right team in place to do the job that you need to get done? And I think that those things are important. The trend I'm watching the most is e-com. E-commerce has been growing, at a very fast clip, double-digit rates, and then there's this big debate. Well, foot traffic is up and e-com is slowing down. And I'm watching this because I do think that e-commerce will always have at its core the advantage of true convenience and amazing assortments. So from my perspective, e-com is always going to grow. The question becomes, how are brands and retailers adapting to blending e-com into the physical environments as well? So it's really that blend of physical and digital that I think is the trend to watch for the future.
Absolutely, that's fascinating. And right, certainly there was an explosion of e-commerce from a convenience and safety and for many reasons, right, over the last few years. So now that people are more comfortable, it's like, how is that pie divided, right? What is that mix going to look like and how do brands adapt to that new mix, right? Yeah. It's fascinating. So let's flip that on its head for a second. So, and think about challenges. I think it's something that we don't talk about as an industry enough. Yeah. And I'm curious, not necessarily specific to you, but as an industry in general, where should we be focusing our attention? Are there challenges facing our business that we should collectively be addressing?
Yeah, I think there's two things that almost every business is facing today. One is, are you upskilling your workforce adequately and enough to compete in these new environments, in these new channels, on these new platforms? So, for me at Colgate, we've done a huge amount of digital upskilling to really bring all of our people forward to market in a digital age really effectively. I think the second challenge, I'll take a step back, is for me, how our industries together, and this is both retailers and brands, going to handle 1P data. I think first-party data is going to become a really important reckoning for brands and consumers, obviously governed by privacy, but incredibly valuable when you think about the potential for consumer insights, direct one-to-one relationships, and improved targeting. And so I think that reckoning with first-party data in this CPG consumer retailer world is going to be a really important part of the challenges we all face in the future, and we have to get ready for it.
So can I ask you a follow-up question on that? Yeah. What role do things like direct-to-consumer channels or retail media networks play in your overall data strategy? Because it's something we've talked about a lot with other marketers in our community, so I'm curious, where do you stand on those?
I mean, they play a very important part. So if you think about things that I'm going to be dealing with this year, absolutely retail media networks and D2C. I mean, they are your number one conduit into first-party data. And so understanding how to build those, how to create longevity in those business models that are also viable for the business and the brands, I think is a huge opportunity. So it's exciting. It's all new work. Not all new, because D2C is not new, but I would say the exciting new paradigms of the challenges for brands of the future.
Look, there's never a dull day in this world, right? So,
Yeah.
but it sounds like you've got some fun stuff ahead of you.
It's great.
And we appreciate you sharing with us and with our community here at Brand Innovators. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And like I said, this is the first in a big series. We're going to be in Vegas at the end of March for the next, and we're going to do more and more and more all around retail and commerce. So we hope to have you back soon.
Great session. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.